Have you ever considered writing a cookbook? If so, you need to write a book proposal if you want to explore getting accepted by a publisher. So, when you write a cookbook proposal, you need to have some things in mind before you do this. Dianne Jacob joins me. She is from DianneJ.com. She's also the author of the book Will Write for Food, which I know is very popular for food bloggers. You may have read it. She talks us through everything we need to know about writing a cookbook proposal inside of this amazing episode. When the right time is, what the right topic is, how to decide what the right topic is for you and your niche, how to structure your proposal so that it is read and accepted, hopefully, how many recipes to include in the proposal and which kinds of recipes to include, and the question that you're probably wondering, how big of a social media presence do you need in order to catch the attention of publishers? I really hope you love it. It is episode number 716. Enjoy. Well, why don't you start by talking to us about your business a little bit? What do you do? Who are you? Give us the background.
Sure, I'd love to. I started my career as a journalist and editor, and I became self-employed in the 90s. And ever since then, I've been working with writers, which became a lot of food bloggers also, and people who want to be published. So I've had a long career of working with writers, and I love it. And food bloggers are great because when it comes to working on a book, because they've already been putting in the work and they understand how to write a recipe and how to find their voice and all that sort of thing. So I probably worked with I've had about 75 books published from people that I've worked with. They're behind me on the shelf over there.
Nice.
And it's very satisfying to hold them in my hands when one comes out. And I work with people who I work with people who want to write a cookbook proposal because that's what you need to get published. And I also work with people who want to write freelance articles, start a newsletter. I wrote this book, Will Write for Food, which has had 4 editions and won a lot of awards. And it tells you everything you need to know about how the publishing industry works, how to get published, how to write a recipe, how to find your voice, whether you have a business, about your brand, all kinds of things. And I've also written a couple of cookbooks with a chef, and I have a newsletter about food writing that has a free version once a month, and I'd love if people could subscribe.
Nice. Yeah. And did they just find that through your website, I assume?
Yes, they can sign up on through diannej.com, dianne.j.com, diannej.com.
Okay.
Or they can go to diannejacob.substack.com and it's there.
Awesome. You must have a background in food if you wrote an entire book about it. Are you a foodie?
I am a foodie. Actually, my book is about writing, but of course there's a lot of food in there because I'm a food writer. One of my first jobs was as the editor of a city restaurant magazine, and I used to do a lot of restaurant reviewing. And I've written a lot of articles, and I've written those 2 cookbooks with a chef. And so, yes, I am a total foodie. I'm totally obsessed with food. And the cruel thing that I wrote about recently in my newsletter is that I recently found out that I'm allergic to onions and garlic, which are in everything.
Oh, no. Oh,
Yeah.
gosh. How are you navigating that? Is that going okay?
Well, it's fun when I'm cooking at home, but going to restaurants,
Yeah.
going to a potluck, I could eat the pretzels at the last potluck I went to.
Oh, no. Oh, I'm So sorry. And garlic and onions just make everything better too.
Oh,
So,
yes, they do.
oh, okay. Well, I can relate to that. I've recently found that I'm allergic to certain oils, which
Oh,
popped up overnight, like soybean oil, I can't have anymore. I can't have coconut oil all of a sudden, and then
oh,
sunflower oil.
wow.
So I, like you, go to potlucks and I'm like, what exactly can I eat? And it's usually pretty limited because it's in those things are in everything. So
Yes.
I feel your
Uh,
pain. I feel your pain.
oh, good. Well, there's at
Yes.
least two of us, and
Yes,
probably
there
many
are.
more.
I know, many more, right? Well,
Right.
thank you for sharing all of that about yourself and your book. And I've heard so many people over the years recommend your book and say how much they loved it and how valuable it was. So,
Oh, thank you.
yeah, sounds like a good
Wonderful.
resource for us bloggers. So, let's dig into the cookbook proposal process. When do you think is the right time to go about writing a cookbook proposal?
It's not when a lot of people think. It's when you have become an expert on your topic and that you can show that there's an audience waiting for your book. Those are the two most important things.
Okay. And when do people usually think about the proposal? Or when is the
Well,
wrong time, I guess?
the wrong time I think is if you've just started your blog and you haven't maybe narrowed down your area of expertise and you're writing about all kinds of foods and all kinds of experiences and you're just experimenting, trying things out, seeing what you like, which is how a lot of people get started. But if you haven't really zeroed in on what the thing is, then it's going to be really hard to write a cookbook because you can't write a cookbook that's I love food.
Yeah, right. Do you find that most cookbooks now have to be super, super niche? Like, I don't know, vegan cupcakes and cakes, or how niche do we have to get with cookbooks right now?
Well, you need a hook. If you're Stanley Tucci or Ina Garten, you can write What I Ate in a Year. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the actual title of Stanley Tucci's second book. But the rest of us mere mortals cannot write that book.
Right. So consider who you
So
are and what your background is first.
yes, and you have to hone in on something. Um, I'm working with someone right now, a very successful blogger, who had identified the most liked um, posts and Instagram posts that went viral, and that's the subject of her book. I mean, she's very
Oh,
deliberate about it.
oh yeah. Right. You don't tend to think to that category, right? Like you think of it has to be a food category, but it could just be what has gone viral. I love that perspective.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
she's going to do a whole book on what went viral because
Yeah.
that is what people want.
Right. That's what people
Because
like.
otherwise she has a baking blog, and it can't just be I love to bake.
Yeah. Right. Gone are the days of I love to bake cookbooks. So, what if somebody has more of a broad niche in the food blogging space and they're really not sure how to figure out what that right topic is?
Well, I'd say do some reflecting on what what gives you the most joy to write about. What do your readers respond to? What do social media respond to? Um, and and that's what you should go with. I mean, there are limits. Like David Leibovitz told me once that he could write a whole book on chocolate, and he could make every post about chocolate, and people would be delighted. But he's not going to.
Yeah.
um, so I mean, he's working on two books this year, and I don't think I know what the second one is. Maybe he's finally done a chocolate book, but he was doing chocolate tours for a while. But you can't. Uh, so there are limits. I mean, to how much you are willing to how far you're willing to go with one subject, but you do need to narrow it down. People don't like to narrow things down a lot of the
Yeah.
time when they're just starting out because they feel like, they're interested in everything and they want to see where things lead, but things have to lead somewhere.
Yeah. Right. So it is kind of a balancing act, it sounds like. It has to be specific. It can't be too broad. It has to be something you're passionate about and that inspires you, right? And do
Yeah.
you also think that people do a lot of exploratory work beforehand? Like, are there already cookbooks on the market for this, that sort of thing?
Um, they could. I mean, a lot of the time you find out what's going on while you're working on your proposal.
Okay.
And the competitive analysis is a really good place to figure out, well, am I writing about the same things that everybody else is writing about, or do I have something new and different to say?
Yeah.
Because that's important too.
Right. A different perspective.
And sometimes you find out that you're going to have to change your book a little bit because there's too many books that are similar. I went through that with someone who wanted to write a vegan Mexican cookbook. And believe it or not, people were saying the market was saturated because there were like
Whoa.
two other books.
Oh, wow. So did
And
they niche down more?
well, she just we really worked on the structure and made it different from the other books and made it more clear on how her recipes were different than the other books, and she got a book deal and it's gonna come out.
Oh, that's great. That's so
Yeah.
exciting. Yay. So now getting into the details about writing a really solid proposal, do you have a structure that you usually recommend people go through?
Oh, sure, I do. I like people to start with their bio because it's a good way to figure out where the holes are. Um, in your, I mean, there's a very high failure rate for book proposals. It's like, I don't know, 98.5%.
Whoa. Oh gosh.
And so, whoever's going to read it is predisposed to say no. And when I work with people, my job is to know what all the no's are going to be and help you figure it out. So, if your platform is lacking when you write your bio, that's going to be an issue. And if you've never written for anyone outside of your blog, that's going to be an issue too, because they want a book that appeals to people nationally and appeals to people outside of your blog. I mean, they want someone to go into a Walmart in Bellingham, Washington, and discover your book, who's never been to your blog, and someone in Texas to discover it somewhere else. So a bio is a good place to see, what are your stats? Have you been published elsewhere? To go over all that kind of stuff, and then I just work with people through each section of the proposal. We work on who's the target audience, what is your promotion plan, who are your competitors, what kind of recipes do you have that are new and different, that are things that people can't find for free online. And then the last section I work on with people. Oh, and the table of contents, obviously, like a structure that's interesting and appealing, and that lists all the recipes. And then last is the overview, because by then you really understand your book. You understand, do you want to be the photographer? Can you show that you are worthy of being a photographer for your own book? If not, have you chosen a photographer? Who is that person? What percentage of the recipes should come from your blog, what percentage should be new, all that kind of stuff. And then in the end, you have something that's like 50 or 60 pages long, double spaced. It's a big document, and it's like a sales pitch, a business plan, and your vision for your book.
50 to 60 pages, that's a
Yeah.
significant amount of work. How long does this typically take people to move through?
I allow 6 months
Okay.
for people to get it together. Yeah.
Are there any parts of the proposal that you just feel like you have to nail this, or do you feel that way about the entire thing?
And I feel that way about the entire thing. However, the beginning,
Okay.
um, as I said, publishers, I mean, editors and agents are predisposed to not like it. So you gotta grab them right from the very first sentence, and you have to figure out how to make it worth their while to keep going all the way through.
Yeah, that's interesting that there's such a fail rate with that, but it makes
Yep.
sense that there is. Obviously, you can't take on every single proposal. Are there any things that the people who get through the cracks do that the others don't do? Like the hook, obviously you mentioned like you have to pull them in, but
Yeah.
what is that? Like how are they doing that?
Well, um, they just have a really good sense of what people want, which is also what they want. I mean, it has to go together, right? You can't, like I said, if your readers want something chocolate every single time, that doesn't necessarily mean that you want to do a chocolate cookbook.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but these days, well, the big publishers want a really big platform too. I mean, they've been signing a lot of TikTok stars and influencers right now, and I hope they're finding out that just because they sign them doesn't mean that their book is going to sell. But I think I think Dylan Hollis had one of the best selling cookbooks last year. I mean, he's a huge influencer. So yeah, they're looking at really big numbers, and most of us do not have those numbers. So you got to find something else that's going to make yourself appealing.
Yeah. Stand out in some way. You're right. Most people don't have the massive followings
No,
and
and
yeah.
they don't. And also, your recipes cannot be. You can't have recipes called, meatloaf, tuna casserole, tacos. Uh, you have to have something that there's. I mean, there's one agent I know who just flips straight to their recipes and looks at the titles, and she doesn't even start at the beginning. And if they
Oh.
don't look like something that somebody's going to pay $30 for, she's done.
Hmm. So something a little more unique than your basic recipes. Um,
Oh yeah, basic
yeah,
recipes. No one's going to pay for that. That's all available online. I
right.
mean, look how much is available online. I just interviewed the head of New York Times Cooking, their app, for my newsletter, and she said they have 25,000 recipes online, and
Wow.
it's the New York Times. They have very good recipes,
Yeah,
and they've
that's
been
a lot.
making a big profit from the cooking section. It has millions of subscribers. People are
Wow.
obsessed with it, and so you're competing with that too.
Yeah. Anything else about the proposal that you think should stand out or be different or that can set you apart from others?
Voice is really important. That has to come through right away from at the beginning of the proposal, um, because there's not that. I mean, publishers want certain kinds of books every year. They're always going to want a bread book, a pizza book. They're going to want baking books. They're going to want technique books. They're going to want vegetarian books, and I mean, there's big high protein phase now that people are going crazy for. So, you know, there's not that much that's new and different, but so your voice can be really a way of differentiating yourself from the pack. I know you've had Sally Akis on the show, and she agented. I think his name is Justin Burke, and he just did a potluck cookbook
Oh,
that is all about queer potlucks and his life as coming out as a gay man, and choosing his family of choice, and how much he loves bringing all these different kinds of cakes and to queer potlucks. So, it's not like there hasn't been a cake cookbook before, but
right.
that's his take. He got a lot of rejection, but he found a publisher. They found a publisher, and that's a way that he stood out.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as bloggers, we're learning how to do that more, how to make ourselves stand out, because there are not only are there a lot of cookbooks, but there are a lot of food bloggers as well. So we're
Yes,
kind
there
of
are.
in that, yeah, mindset of like, what do I do differently? What is different about my voice than other people's voices? So
Yeah, those are
that's
good
something in
questions
our
to ask
favor.
yourself. Yeah, and the cookbook is not, you know, here's a bunch of stuff from my blog. Um, it needs to be more focused than that. It
Yeah.
can be that if you're smitten kitchen, but most of us are not.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so how many recipes do you recommend including in the cookbook? Do you have recommendations on that?
Well, I say I like to have 10. I've heard recently that people have put only 5, but I want the readers of the proposal, which is the agent and the editor. I want them to see your range. I want them to see long recipes, short recipes, a baking recipe, a braising recipe, a recipe with 10 ingredients, a recipe with 2 ingredients, different ingredients, all the very sophisticated ways that you have, because recipe writing is your jam. That's you. Food bloggers definitely know that subject, and they just want to see. They want to see that you are an accomplished recipe writer, and that you have a lot of tricks up your sleeve.
Okay, so yeah, just kind of showing a spectrum of what you can do and why you're here, why you're writing the proposal, I suppose. Do you recommend having full those 5 recipes or whatever you choose for the proposal? Do you recommend having the full recipe, including the intro or a description and everything included in it?
Well, not the way that Google makes you write recipes,
Right.
but the way
Not like
that
a blog
cookbook.
post. Yeah.
Not like a blog post, but
Hmm.
but the way that a cookbook would present it, where it's the title, the
Okay.
head note, the yield, the ingredients list, and the method. And then if there are sidebars that go with it, then fine, include those. If you're planning to have a lot of writing in your cookbook, then include some chapter openers, or longish sidebars, or maybe you're doing personal essays. Do not write the introduction in your sample recipe, because your proposal is already your introduction, so you don't need to be repetitive. You want to include, maybe there's some recipes that went viral. Maybe you want some of those in your cookbook. So I would put those in, some of your very best recipes. And plus, you want a lot of variety. You want, a long one, a short one where there's sauteing, one where there's baking, one with different techniques, maybe Some of them have sidebars. You can include those. You're not writing a blog post. You're just writing a standard recipe that starts with the title and ends with the method. And so just do your best to really mix it up and put in the ones that you think are the best examples of your work that readers, including what your readers have responded to.
Okay, that's helpful. And then you talked a little bit about having a social media presence and how that can influence
Mm,
publishers.
yeah.
Do we need to have, is there a minimum, number that you like to go by to have? I don't know. I have no idea if there is or not. I'll let you
You
give your
know,
thoughts.
I ask that question all the time when I'm interviewing agents and editors, and I never get an answer. Except there was one editor who said, "Don't come to me if you have less than 40,000 followers." Um, but everybody else is like, "Oh no, if I'm really impressed with the proposal, then it's okay if you don't have a big following." Um, so it's really hard to say what
Yeah,
what number that should be. I
but
did
there
have
should
an
be a social
agent.
media presence.
I did send a proposal to an agent that I'd worked on with someone, and she said, "Oh, this person has 80,000 followers. She should come back to me when she has closer to 200,000."
Hmm.
That was that
Oh my gosh.
particular agent, and
Right.
that client got a book deal with someone else using a different
Oh,
agent.
okay.
So,
So it really is arbitrary. You can hear one number and it could be way off depending on who you're talking to.
yes.
Okay. So there's no answer to that, is
No.
the bottom line.
Well, I don't think they want to say what the answer is. Of course, they want the biggest possible following because they
Yeah.
want to sell the biggest possible number of books. But they also know that just because somebody has 5 million followers doesn't necessarily mean that the cookbook is going to be a bestseller. It doesn't always follow, so they don't know.
Right. Okay. A lot of factors are involved there, I'm
Yes,
sure.
yes.
Yes. But they should have some social media presence, correct?
Oh yeah, they can. There's no way they could get a book deal if they had a very little presence,
Okay.
because it's just
Okay.
expected these days that you are going to be selling your book to your followers, and you have to have followers because only a tiny percentage of them are going to buy it.
And when you say social media, do you mean Instagram and TikTok, or are there other platforms to keep in mind?
I think those are the main platforms that get people excited. I think YouTube gets people
Okay,
excited too.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
great. And then is there anything else we need to know, Diane, about writing a proposal, things to keep in mind, anything else?
Well, you have to have patience. It's a very long process. I think where people go wrong is that they just get sick of working on it and it's not done. By not done, I mean there are holes in it that I mentioned before that people are going to reject your proposal, and you just go, "Oh, I'm kind of sick of working on this. It's time to send it." That is not a good idea.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
for bloggers, the whole is either they don't have a big enough social media presence. And you could work on your social media presence for a year and it doesn't get that much bigger. So that is a real quandary. And I think the answer for bloggers is to get published outside of your blog, because if you get a recipe on Simply Recipes, um, they have hundreds of thousands of readers. And so you've just extended your reach by doing that. So if you have a very small following, you could still get a couple of recipes published elsewhere, and that would make a huge difference. That's very time consuming too, to find
Yeah.
to go down that path. But you need to go down the path before you send out the proposal.
Okay. Okay, that's great information. Kind of doing pre work, legwork,
Yes.
getting yourself ready for this. Don't send in a proposal that you don't feel is strongly put together, and getting a good niche topic that you feel passionately about. And then you kind of talk through the structure. Is there anything else we should keep in mind?
Just, be patient with yourself. It does take quite a long time to get a really solid proposal. Like I said, I usually work with people with it on for 6 months. Sometimes people send me their proposal, and I do have a service where I'll read it and I'll mark it up. I'll send you a summary, and then we'll talk about it. And I think people get really frustrated because I have a lot of comments, and
I bet.
I don't know what happens to those people. I think some of them get discouraged, but of course, I would have preferred that they work with me on it from the beginning, but not everybody does
Yeah.
that, obviously. Um, so just be patient with yourself and make sure that you have done your best on every single section.
Yeah. That's great advice. Thank you. Thank you for all this knowledge today, and for just showing up for the cookbook authors of the world and being such a great resource. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Megan. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, so to end, I like to ask my guests if they have a favorite quote. Some people are quote people, some are not. And if not, I feel like you've already delivered words of inspiration, but do you have anything additionally to share?
Well, the way I think about it sometimes is that people have to back up before going forward, and that's the part that people don't like. But that is the part where they're filling in the holes that agents and editors are going to ding you for. So I
Yeah.
think it's hard, but I think people do get it that they have to fill in those holes.
I think it's good to prep people with that beforehand instead of getting into it and being disappointed. Like, I thought this was all going to go great, and why isn't this working right away? So, yeah, just being realistic about what to expect is huge mentally. So,
So are you
thank you
going to
for
write a
that. We'll put
cookbook now?
together.
Do you feel
Oh,
encouraged or
well,
discouraged?
well, I did write a cookbook a few years ago.
Yes.
And it was a, I don't know. I don't want to dampen the mood, but it was a hard stretch for me. It was just a lot. And every time I see it, I'm so proud of it. But
Yeah.
I remember the hard times that were associated with it. But I do want to someday refresh and do a cookbook that isn't associated with those feelings. I just don't know the topic yet. I know when the time is right, it'll come to me and I'll be re inspired. So
Well, I think
someday in the
it's hard
future.
for bloggers because you got to keep your blog going while you're working on your cookbook, and then the people who
Yes.
choose to do all the photography have this whole other burden on top of that. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is really hard. Yeah.
It's no joke. It is a big deal, but yeah. We'll put together a show notes page for you, Diane. If anyone wants to go look at those, we'll have all the notes we talked about today, plus resources. You can head to eatblogtalk.com/Dianne Jacobs, and that's spelled Dianne, and that's Jacob without an S.
Thank you.
Yes, tell everyone where they can find you, Diane, if they want help, and also what services do you provide?
You can go to diannej.com, diannej.com. That's my website. And I have two services related to writing cookbooks, and that is a 6-month plan for working together, and I'll coach you through every single section, and then we'll put it together and read it as a whole and see how it stands up. You can also send me a proposal and I'll review it. Some people really need to get published. They need to get their recipes published if they don't have a big platform, and I do coach people through how to be published on websites and in magazines and newspapers. And I think that's mostly it for food bloggers. Yeah, you guys are already doing a
And
great job.
oh, and obviously your book, Will
And
Write for
obviously,
Food. Check that out
yes,
too.
obviously, yes, we'll write for food.
Yes.
Pursue your passion, bring home the dough, writing recipes, cookbooks, blogs, and more.
All right. Well, amazing. Thank you again, Dianne. And thank you for listening, food bloggers. I will see you next time.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this topic, be sure to watch the video shown on the screen. See you next time.